me!
It's time to talk about everyone's favorite pizza-munching party animal, Michelangelo. Despite the fact that these days Michelangelo seems to be treated as the baby brother, cute, goofy one of the turtles, I feel like back in the day he was the cool one. He was the dude. All the turtles were trendy and funny and cracked jokes, but Michelangelo did all of that much more than the rest. And I feel that's greatly reflected in the type of figures he got. In most turtle variants for Michelangelo, he would be things like a surfboarder, a skateboarder, a rapper, a pro wrestler, pretty much anything that was considered really, really cool with kids in the late 80s and early 90s. And he was always decked out in the most neon fluorescent colors of all the turtles. Despite the fact that Michelangelo is no longer my favorite turtle, he was when I was a child. Now I tend to prefer Raphael and most of all Donatello. I still think Michelangelo's awesome, and I would say he definitely gets the best action figures in the vintage wave. I think when you're talking about all the turtle variants for Leo, Mike, Raph, Don, Michelangelo has the greatest total of amazing figures. His usually stand out more than the others, and I don't know why that is. He just always seemed to get the coolest, maybe because he always reflected the time period the most with all those fluorescent colors and hip, stylish, different versions of himself. So without any further ado, let's jump in and talk about Mikey. Just as I was saying, Michelangelo was the cool guy back then. And this is reflected in calling him Rock and Roll Michelangelo. While the other wacky action turtles' names imply what their wacky action is, Rock and Roll Michelangelo is just called Rock and Roll Mike because he's cool. I think this was the first time they kind of made an attempt to represent the turtles' personalities through the face sculpts of the figures. Leo, while actually looking constipated for Sword Slice and Leo, is supposed to look stern and serious. Raph has kind of a sneaky, cheeky grin on his face, and Michelangelo's sticking his tongue out because he's the jokester. Donatello just gets a regular face because Playmates never cared about Donatello. I could be looking into this too much. They may have just been giving unique faces to the turtles because they just wanted to give personality to the brand as a whole, but I like to think that they thought a little deeper and they were trying to represent the personalities we saw in the characters in the cartoon show in our figures. Rock and Roll Mike's action is a twisting wrist motion so that he can twirl a nunchuck, much like he does all the time in the cartoon. Although he comes with a bunch of other weird accessories, and even his nunchucks are pretty weird for this figure. But he also comes with what looks like a dinner plate covered in silverware, and he comes with two snakes tied together at the tail. To be honest, they remind me of the gopher chucks from Kung Pao.
I need gopher chucks!
I always find it weird how the Ninja Turtles have a bunch of little animal buddies who are just happy to be used as weapons. The copy of the figure I have now actually still has the action feature working. It doesn't work great, as with many wind-up toy style figures. When you wind it up, he spins for a little bit, then stops, but then if you tap him again or move him in a certain way, it starts spinning again. I've always had that problem with wind-up toys. I remember even as a child having wind-up toy rhinoceroses and elephants that walk and stuff when you wind them up. And every time that would happen, they'd walk a little bit, then they'd come to a complete stop. Then you'd pick them up and their legs would start moving again and they'd start walking on nothing. But once you put them down, they'd stop again. Or they'd walk right off a ledge and just keep walking while they're upside down. It seems like anytime there's any slight bit of resistance in the way, it doesn't work. But Mike's still spinning that wrist pretty good. Not too bad for a 30-plus-year-old figure. Pretty impressive. Most wind-up toys stop working after a month. Unlike Sword, Slice, and Leo, I don't actually remember when or how I got this figure. I have no specific memory of unboxing Rock and Roll Mike. I just remember having him as a kid, and I don't really remember any specific situations with him. I don't have particular memories with this figure. I just know it was there and we had it. it wasn't terribly noteworthy. And I'm not saying it's a bad figure. It's actually a lot of fun, and I could see someone having tons of great memories with this one. As I said, I think Michelangelo has the best subline figures of any of the turtles in total, but this is definitely not one of them. Not a bad figure at all, but it holds no special place really in my heart. Mike the Sewer Surfer, what an absolute classic. Anyone who was a kid into this line back in the late 80s and early 90s probably has very fond memories of this figure. It was one of the greatest original turtle alts, and it really matched Michelangelo. I think most of the figures from the Turtles in Disguise subline somewhat matched the Turtles' personalities for the most part, but none of them match as well as Michelangelo. We just knew this figure had to happen. Mike may have been raised in New York City, but he's a Californian at heart. Even his voice actor from the 1987 cartoon series has said that he was channeling the character Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High when originally pitching the voice for Michelangelo.
All I need are some tasty waves, a cool buzz, and I'm fine.
He is the quintessential 80s and early 90s California surfer dude. He says all the surfer terms like cowabunga, mondo, radical, tubular, and he even sounds like Bill and Ted.
Excellent!
So putting him in a fluorescent wetsuit and giving him a neon orange surfboard was a given. I loved the colors of this figure as a kid. The hot pink and the electric blue with the neon orange and chartreuse just popped so much, especially against Mike's darker sort of green skin tone. It's such an incredible figure to look at, just with all the detail, the crazy seaweed and critters all over his body, with that insane color scheme that just cries late 80s, early 90s. It's really just an awesome looking figure. This kind of cemented an ongoing trend that a lot of Michelangelo variant figures would have a lot of neon colors on them. And I think neon just works really good for Mike. Again, he's everything rad from the late 80s and early 90s, and nothing was radder than neon colors. I find it funny that the back of the package refers to the sharks sculpted on his figure as accessories labeled Shark Buddies, when they're really not. They're just molded parts of the figure. It's like they were trying to convince you that the figure came with more stuff than he actually did. But in actuality, he's a pretty stacked figure. He's pretty much the first figure in the entire line to come with a pseudo-vehicle. Sure, most people wouldn't refer to a surfboard as a vehicle, but when you're getting something that is not a battering item or a gun, it's a mode of transportation, and it's as large as the figure itself. I consider that a pseudo-vehicle. He can stand on it. It comes with this radical sticker on it that looks like Saved by the Bell or Toe Jam and Earl and writes Cowabunga spelled wrong on it. And it even comes with this cool little spinning blade you can put on it that I guess is supposed to shred the water and spray it up at people. And he also comes with a little crab buddy that you can plug in anywhere on the board. It's just cool that even though there aren't a lot of customizable options, you do get customizable options for the surfboard to make the whole scene of Mike riding on it more interesting. He doesn't really come with anything other than the board and the accessories for the board, but that in and of itself is quite a lot, and he also comes with a belt. Now, as I've said before, he has holes on the back of his belt for the nunchucks, or nunchaku, from the original figure because they did expect you to use the weapons that came with the original Turtles for the variants of the Turtles, almost like the variants were supposed to replace the original Turtles in a weird way. Or if you just wanted to have Sewer Surfer Mike use the nunchucks, you can just take them from your regular Michelangelo figure and lend them to the Sewer Surfer one. But the thing is, I don't think that was done a lot because in all actuality, most of the kids back then had a much better chance of holding on to the figures rather than the accessories. I think most kids probably still had their original Mikes when they got Sewer Surfer, but a lot of them probably didn't have those nunchucks. Now, like Rock and Roll Mike, I actually don't remember the specific time I got this figure, I don't even remember if it was mine or my brother's. I just remember after moving into my house from my townhouse in 1990 that we had this figure at some point, and we had it for a couple years. And I just remember the early years of being in that new house with this figure. Nothing super particular. I do recall one day where I was walking around the backyard and the side of the house playing with him and just kind of looking at all the detail on him. But there's no real super memorable moments with this figure. I just remember always liking it a lot. It's definitely one of the best early variants and one of the quintessential Michelangelo variants. While I was aware of the fact that there were these giant Ninja Turtle figures as a kid, I didn't own any of them, and honestly I can't figure out why, but for some reason as a kid, it just never crossed our minds that we would need to collect these. Like, I didn't really have any interest in it, but looking back on it, it's like that would have been so much fun. These would have been really fun figures to just beat the heck out of and just have them fight each other and, you know, take them everywhere. They were really big, chunky, durable figures, and I feel like I would have absolutely loved these as a kid, but for some reason we didn't have any interest. I guess we wanted everything to be in that same scale. We were dedicated to collecting the 4-inch scale, so I guess when something was real big, we would just kind of thought, well, what would we do with that? But that is really strange because we had plenty of other Turtles toys, like a Leonardo Frisbee and even a board game that molded little Play-Doh Ninja Turtles, color form sets. So I find it strange that we wouldn't have also wanted big chunky Turtles action figures, but for some reason we just never did. I remember seeing them in KB and stuff and just never really going for them. But in 2019, when I was moving into my current house, I was at a mall one day with a couple friends, and they had a big special, you know, toy sale thing. Not just the toys, but, you know, garage sale kind of thing going on. Just all these different stands, some with baseball cards, some with action figures and all. And that day I picked up Ninja Knockin' Bebop, and I also saw this guy, and he was only $20 for a complete giant Michelangelo with belt and nunchuck. And that is rare. That is very rare to find these guys complete, and definitely even more rare to find them for that price. So I absolutely knew I needed him, and I also knew right then that he would make a great centerpiece to one of my shelves. And he has been a centerpiece to one of my shelves for years now, since I got him. So I actually got him before I even fully moved into the new place. And he went up immediately when I got the new place. And I also picked up Giant Bebop and Rocksteady, which I got for an insanely good deal. And they ended up coming with Giant Movie, Leonardo, and Raph. I have some other giant figures now, basically, is what I'm getting to. But the only one of the original giant turtles I have is this Michelangelo. And it is essentially just a blown up sculpt of the normal Michelangelo, just not as glossy and waxy as the original figure. It's more of a dry vinyl. And they gave him pupils in his eyes. I guess they thought when the eyes were that big, they might as well put the pupils in. But I think most people would probably like the way he would look better if he had all white eyes. The pupils can look a little funny, depending on how you look at the figure. But I like it. I think it looks cool. I like the belt being its own material and all. It's definitely a really fun figure, and I think these toys could have been a really fun part of my childhood if I didn't sleep on them so hard. I know Playmates recently re-released them, but they all were way smaller than they originally were, and the colors were a little off, and they did not have unique head sculpts. Instead, they all had Donatello's head sculpt, which I think is really lazy and inexcusable, and it's really not a blast from the past like they tried to make it, because they're essentially new figures. They're not really the original Giant Turtles re-released. I would say, despite the fact that they're very expensive, if you want the Giant Turtles, get the originals. As I've already said with Storage Shell Leonardo, I think the Storage Shell Turtles are really, really cool. I don't know why, but I really love the way those colored belts look, and I think the face sculpts are superb. The sculpts in general are really good. They definitely feel more unique and like individual from one another than the original Turtles figures, and really just feel like an upgrade. Like, as the line was getting better and all the unique character figures and turtle alts were looking better, they were like, let's make the standard Turtles look as good as the rest of the line. And that's what I really feel like the Storage Shell Turtles are. Unfortunately, I don't have that much to say about Storage Shell Mike, because I think we had him as kids, but honestly, I don't even remember, because there was just so many turtle figures, and the Storage Shell Turtles, for the most part, I don't have that many specific memories of them. I think actually the Leonardo one is the one I remember the most, although I'm pretty sure we actually had all 4 of them. It is incredible how much stuff they gave each of them and how much of it actually fits in these shells, because they are not big figures. There is not a lot of storage space in them, but they made the best use of it, and they really gave them all accessories that properly fit in together like puzzle pieces into the shells. Storage Shell Mike didn't come with any accessory as crazy and interesting as the little armadillo buddy that Leonardo came with, but he comes with some crazy stuff like a sickle, which I would not expect Michelangelo to have. And of course he comes with pizzas, because all of them came with pizzas that are like razor blades at the same time. Again, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. I just would say he's a very good figure, and I can't recommend any collector picking up all 4 of the Storage Shell Turtles enough. Skateboardin Mike is kind of an anomaly because he's not really properly part of any subline. He came out around the same time as Make My Day Leo and Hose 'Em Down Don, but I wouldn't really even call that a solid subline, because it was really just 2 figures. It's like a half subline. It seems like there should have been this whole like civil servant line where there's a construction worker and an ambulance driver or something, but they didn't do that. They just did a policeman and a fireman and just stopped it there. And Michelangelo was just a skateboarder because he's Michelangelo, he skateboards. This one was as essential as Mike the Sewer Surfer. We knew at some point we had to have a Skateboardin Michelangelo toy, and this one definitely delivered. Like Mondo Gecko, which this is a perfect like partner figure for, like you can really make them a duo and have a lot of fun playing with those 2 figures together. He comes with a fully functional tech deck style skateboard accessory that he can stand on. It plugs into his feet and actually rolls. He also comes with the option of wearing rollerblades rather than the skateboard, but the rollerblades don't actually move, unfortunately. They're just for show. So you can pretend they're rolling by just dragging the figure around, but they won't actually roll like the skateboard does on its own when you push it. It is nice that they gave us that option though, as aside from the decals, Mondo Gecko really only came with the skateboard. So Michelangelo coming with 2 extra accessories is nice. Years later, when they re-released the original figures and repackaged them, Playmates sort of retroactively, accidentally changed this figure and lumped him in with the Sewer Sports All-Stars. But originally, to the best of my knowledge, he had nothing to do with the Sewer Sports All-Stars. He was just a standalone, one-off Skateboardin Michelangelo figure. At some point in between 2015 and 2018, I don't remember exactly when, they re-released a bunch of random Turtles figures like Delta Force Dawn and the Superhero Turtles, and they put out Skateboardin Mike at that time, and it was just inexcusable how bad the paint job was. They didn't paint the lenses on his sunglasses. I mean, they didn't paint the giant M on his shirt either, which is pretty egregious. But I feel like not painting the lenses on the sunglasses is basically the equivalent of not painting the eyes. Like, imagine if the original Michelangelo action figure didn't have white eyes, it was just all orange. Like, you don't do that. The eyes are the first thing you look at when you see a humanoid figure. When you see a living creature, the first thing you look at is its face and the eyes. If you don't paint the eyes, you might as well not even make the figure. And I get, you know, you can't have too many different colored paints on it for the cost they're trying to put it out at, the price they're trying to put it out at. But if it's going to cost that much, where you can't even put colored lenses on it, then don't bother making the figure. You clearly can't make it. I feel like if you can't put the eyes on the figure, then you shouldn't bother releasing the figure. I think they at least could have, you know, if they can't get the yellow color of the lens that was originally on the figure, they could have just used the white of the teeth and the bandage on his glasses. Sure, it wouldn't have looked as good as the yellow, but at least it looks better than there being no color on the lenses at all. And for that matter, the M, rather than using the orange, if they couldn't get that on the buck, they could have just used the red of the pants. It's already there on that part of the figure. I don't get why they had to just leave the M all blue and the lenses all orange. It just looks really, really bad, and there's no excuse for that. I mean, I know recently when they re-released the original Bebop in stores, his entire legs are just black. They didn't paint his sneakers or his shins or anything. It's just all black, and that's pretty inexcusable, but it's even worse when it's the face of the figure. So I'm pretty glad they haven't done anything this bad when re-releasing the vintage figures in recent years. Again, he's rocking the neon orange instead of the regular orange, which is appropriate for this one because skateboarding went hand in hand with the neon colors back then. Skateboarding was about as rad as you could get in the early 90s. And he is just totally in an early 90s skateboarder kind of getup. While it looks like he's wearing some crazy stuff to kids today, back then it made perfect sense that he would look this way. And I remember actually thinking this figure was really cool. So much so that I recall being over my friend Robbie and Jude's house for a sleepover once, and even though we had this figure at home already, they had their copy of it, and I just stopped and studied the figure and appreciated how cool the detail was for like 10 minutes at their house. I don't think it's that interesting of a figure to look at now. It's definitely one of the less detailed turtle variants, but hey, I definitely liked it as a kid, so I'm not going to deny that. It was a very cool figure. While I wouldn't say visually it's like the coolest Michelangelo figure, I would say it looks appropriate, it was essential for the time, and it's actually a really fun action figure to play with. Again, especially as a partner figure for Mondo Gecko. Since this is the only one of the Talkin' Turtles I own today, I'll just use this as an excuse to talk about the Talkin' Turtles. This was a weird experiment, one of the many cases where Playmates tried a new ambitious play feature and didn't really know exactly how to go about it the correct way, but it's fun that they tried what they tried. It was this bizarre thing where the figures came with these long strips of plastic that had writing on them. And when you stuck them through the shell, slid them through the shell in little slots on them, at the correct speed, it would sound like they were saying the quotations on the plastic sticks. I had a lot of trouble getting this to work properly when I first got them. I recall getting several of them, although I don't believe we had Michelangelo. I could be wrong, but I think we had the other three as kids. I remember us getting them in a department store in the mall in Vermont, and they were particularly cheap at that time. And I want to say I got my Wacky Walkin' Mauser at the same time too, but I could be wrong on that. And I recall going back to my grandparents' house in Vermont and sitting down in the dining room and trying to get them to talk. There was a little step that was right at the edge of the dining room that led into the living room, an old wooden step, and we were trying to get the figures to talk, and we could not figure it out. At some point, even my mom and grandmother came over and started trying to get it to work, and it just always sounded like I couldn't understand a damn thing those turtles were saying. Eventually, we got it where they started to sound like sentences, but I don't remember if it was a matter of doing it quicker or doing it slower that made it work correctly. I don't sadly have any of those strips today, and I don't even know if they still function today. They may have gotten warped or distorted over the years, so I can't test it, but that's how I remember it going. It's interesting to note that Well, aside from the fact that the turtles' shells are actually giant, thick, chunky sewer covers for these figures rather than shells, or maybe they're just wearing manhole covers on top of their shells. It was always weird to me. But it's interesting to note that on these shells, which double as speakers that the noise comes out of, it says patent pending, which means they were putting a patent out for this method of talking action figure. And it clearly didn't officially get patented at that point. So they were just very eager to rush this out. They didn't even wait for the patent to get approved, which is kind of crazy. I guess they really thought this was going to be a big thing, and they really wanted to shove out the talking turtles as fast as they could. I do find it strange, though, because I feel like by this point there was probably already a couple action figures or toys or dolls on the market that talked better. Obviously, you had tape recorder ones like Teddy Ruxpin. I wouldn't really count those because you couldn't put an entire Walkman inside of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4-inch action figure. But I feel like there had to be a better way of making them talk rather than this weird plastic strip thing. But I don't really know what that would be. The build of the figures essentially being a speaker with arms, legs, and a head does limit the articulation as well, as the legs are not on the normal ball-like joints that they are, they're just swiveling legs. So they're not terribly fun figures to play with either, unfortunately. I feel like they're big and clunky, they feel weird, the shell makes them not look like true Turtles figures and rather just a gimmick, and they're just limited in a lot of ways. There's nothing that really stands out about them physically other than good face sculpts to really make them Turtles figures you'd want to play with. I think the turtle shell pattern belts are a cool addition. I always like it when they do crazy belts for the more normal looking turtle variants, like the colored belts on the storage shell turtles, but it's not enough to save them. As a kid, I wasn't a terribly huge fan of the talking turtles, and I'm still not really a terribly huge fan of the talking turtles today. I don't hate them. I think they're very cool and it's a novel idea, but they don't really stand out amongst all the other turtle variants that came out. I actually did get Raphael again at some point in 2007, but as I've said, my brother and I were very stupid in 2007 and we thought it was really funny to trash stuff. So we laughed and said that the talking turtles were crap. And since this just came in bulk with Toka and Scaletail and several other figures that I wanted at the time, we just trashed the talking Raph and I broke him apart and everything. So that's a shame. I would have liked to still have the talking Raph, but you know, I could always get him back. I don't think the talking turtles are terribly expensive, especially if you don't get them with the talking strips. But yeah, just another strange little interesting bit of the vintage Playmates toy line where they just tried so many new innovative ideas for action figures. At one point, my brother received Rappin Mike and Punker Don at the same time, and I thought both of those figures were really, really cool as a kid. While he isn't made to represent any one rapper in particular, I believe, I could be wrong, I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to hip-hop, he does have various nods, like Flava Flav's clock necklace, and he overall just very much does resemble what an MTV rapper looked like in the early 90s. The sidewards neon hat, the white tank top, the black baggy pants with crazy neon writing on them, the crazy jewelry around his neck, and the brass knuckles that write Mike Raps on them. It's pretty awesome. I think it's also pretty hilarious that his pants just say, "Yo, rap." Clearly a figure made by someone who probably never listened to rap a day in their life. This is another case of an awesome color scheme on an action figure, and it's just really representative of what was cool at that time. You know, this figure, the way his sunglasses look, the way his outfit looks, the expression on his face, this was just cool in 1990 and 1991. I always felt like his head was a little too big. Weirdly, he has a larger head than even the other music turtles, the rock and roll turtles. So he never quite fit in that much because he just looks a bit off, but I don't think it's that big a problem, honestly. He comes with some really cool accessories also. I love the neon orange of the accessories. They're cast in a neon orange plastic and it looks really, really cool. I also love that he comes with nunchucks, but they're actually microphones. So they're weapons and he can use them to rap as well. That's a really creative idea. He comes with these crazy mixing boombox turntable thing. And he even comes with these two cymbals. Weirdly enough, he's the only figure in the Rock and Roll Turtles line that doesn't come with two records. Most of them come with these little records that have little clever names on them. But Michelangelo doesn't come with that. He comes with these two cymbals that he can hold like shields. The weird thing is though, I don't know if all of them came like this, but many of them came where one of them was cast in neon orange plastic like the rest of his accessories, but the other one was cast in blue. The exact same blue as Classic Rocker Leo's accessories. And Classic Rocker Leo had one miscolored record that was colored in the same neon orange as Rappin Mike's accessories. So there was always this weird cross between the two of them. Like, either one of Mike's symbols is meant to go to Classic Rocker Leo, and one of Classic Rocker Leo's records is meant to go to Rappin Mike, or they actually messed up at the factory and cast the wrong accessories in the wrong plastic. I think that might be the case, but that is crazy if so, and even crazier that that just went unnoticed and it got released like that. Because Raphael's records are both red, Donatello's records are both yellow, but Michelangelo and Leonardo had these mismatched accessory colors where they swapped colors. It's really bizarre. While I don't usually go on too much about modern action figures in these videos, Super 7, who has been doing, the upscaled, crazier, collector level versions of the vintage action figures, or at least that's what they originally set out to do, and it's been taking them pretty long to get around to doing a lot of them, plan to do Rappin Mike in the future. We've seen the pictures of him, and I have to say, for some reason, it just doesn't look as cool. I don't know what it is. I guess the sculpt is not as raw and crazy and unhinged as the original, but also the fact that they made his hat so small and it's a removable accessory, and the sunglasses are removable, and the clock is removable, it doesn't make the figure feel as cool. There was something about all that detail worked into a sculpt that seemed really awesome, that when you separate them and they can be put on the body in any way you want, it doesn't look as detailed. It doesn't look as crazy as the original one did. It looks more controlled and less unhinged, and I think that kills a lot of the classic Rappin Mike style. But if you're a collector of the original, Rappin Mike is definitely one you can't miss. Oh yeah, let me tell you, brother, this figure was awesome. Did you ever want Michelangelo wearing the hot pink and black of Bret the Hitman Hart combined with the aesthetic of Jake the Snake Roberts? Well, here you go, Shell Slammin Mike. I really can't stress enough how cool the neon colors look on Michelangelo, and especially on this figure. This is the most hot pink in the entire Turtles line, because his entire torso is sculpted in hot pink plastic. It is so loud and it just commands your attention. I remember when I got this figure on that infamous Christmas morning where I got Slapshot Leo, the Cheapskate 2, the Blimpin' Glider, the Rock'em Sock'em Robots Turtles Arena, and the stuffed Santa Raph, among other things. I just thought this was the coolest looking Mike alt at that time. He looks so mean, the colors are awesome, the aesthetic is really cool, the cape is badass, he comes with a snake. Unfortunately, he doesn't really come with much else, I guess you can see the cape as an accessory, but he doesn't really need to come with much else. He's a wrestler. I guess he could have come with a fold-up chair that he could bash people with, but alas, he didn't. Now, this figure would be extremely awesome if not for one major caveat, and that is he doesn't stand. His action feature ruins the toy, and for that matter, it's an action feature that doesn't really even work, do much of anything. My guess is he's either supposed to slam characters with his shell, like you squat him down with someone laying behind him, then when you let go, he flings back on top of them, or he's supposed to be holding somebody and German suplexing them, but neither one of them really works. When you let go of him after making him squat, he kind of just hops up and then falls over in a random direction. It's not a very good action feature, and unfortunately, to make it work, they had to give him very strange legs that don't move, they're not articulated, and he doesn't really stand in the pose that his feet are in. If you mess with the figure and tug some of the feet in certain directions, you can make the leg kind of snap into a different pose, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. It always feels like you're breaking the figure when you do that, and it can just pop out at any moment. And it's still not true articulation. I don't think it was intended. I think that's an accidental thing you can do. It's kind of annoying to have an action figure that you can't actually stand up. This isn't like Chrome Dome where I say you can't actually stand him up, but he is technically designed to be able to stand. This guy is really designed so that he cannot even stand. So he's not a very good character to display, because to display him, you're always going to have to lean him up against something else. But for playing, he's a very good one. Though the fact that he has no leg articulation does make him seem a little boring when it comes to the playability. You can't really pose him around or anything. He's really always in that same static pose. It's not a terribly interesting pose either. So unfortunately, even though I absolutely love the aesthetics of this figure to death, and it is an incredibly nostalgic figure, for some reason looking at it reminds me specifically of being a child when I got this, more than almost any other Turtles figure. I can't say it's one of the best ones, because the lacking posability and the fact that he can't stand and the lackluster action feature that doesn't really even work very well, unfortunately make it kind of less than desirable. But I still have to say it is super rad looking and a great representation of how loud and crazy and awesome professional wrestling was back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Well, blow me down.
Midshipman Mike. I have fond memories of this figure. Part of the military series, the first wave of the military series, which ended up being a massive series of 10 different figures. Midshipman Mike was a special figure for me particularly. As I said, usually as a kid, I only got Ninja Turtle figures for Christmas or birthdays or my brother's birthday or special occasions of sorts. But this was when I was in kindergarten. I had just started school. That fall, we were going to take a class trip to the pumpkin patch. That was something that every kindergartner did in the school I went to. It was a well-known thing. All my older siblings all went to the pumpkin patch in kindergarten. It's your first class trip ever when you go to that school. So I was a little worried because I'd never gone on a class trip before, but I was excited. And my mom was going to come with me. So I was like, okay, everything's going to be fine. You know, mom's going to be there. But then it rained, I think. Something happened where we couldn't do the trip. I remember my mom felt really bad that I didn't get to go on my first class trip to the pumpkin patch. So she took me out to the diner and we got lunch together, and then she took me to Toys R Us, or maybe she took me to Toys R Us first, I don't remember, and let me get a Ninja Turtle. And I didn't even know Midshipman Mike existed, so when I saw him, I was like, oh, I have to get this. And I picked him up and we went home, and I just remember playing with him in the kitchen, and it just felt so special because it was like this special set of circumstances, this series of events that happened that weren't supposed to happen, which ended up leading to me getting a new action figure, which in my mind was a lot more special than seeing some pumpkins because, I mean, to be honest, me and my family pretty much always went to the pumpkin patch in October and got pumpkins ourselves anyway and painted or carved them. So I was going to do that regardless. I didn't really need to go with my kindergarten class of a bunch of kids that I wasn't even really friends with. So honestly, I would have much rather taken the day that I got where I went to the diner and got this Michelangelo action figure. Around that time too, my brother and I would very frequently on sheets of paper with markers and all draw fake action figure boxes, and we'd make up Ninja Turtle characters and Ninja Turtle variants because we just wanted there to be more and more figures all the time. We created a lot of original mutants like a sumo wrestling hippopotamus and a super buffed out Safaka. We only knew what a Safaka was because my brother was subscribed to National Geographic World magazine for kids, as well as Ranger Rick at some point. So we started to learn all kinds of crazy animals at a young age. But we also many times drew alts of the Turtles because we knew that was a big thing that happened in the toy line. We would do other figures inspired by Ninja Turtles like that, like we would do the Koopalings from Super Mario Brothers, and we'd do them as all different themes, like, oh, these are going to be the horror Koopalings or Revolutionary War Koopalings and all this weird stuff. So we did a lot of stuff like that. So when my brother came back from school and I told him that this crazy day had happened, which, you know, looking back at it wasn't that crazy, but in kindergarten it seemed amazing. And I told him I got a new figure, got a new Ninja Turtle. He wasn't that excited. He later admitted that he thought that I had just drawn a new figure. So he was acting excited, like, oh, cool, let's go see it. But deep down inside, he was just expecting to see a drawing that I made. But then when he got to the kitchen and I showed him Midshipman Mike, he was like, oh my god, we actually got a new Ninja Turtle that we didn't even know existed. So that always felt cool that I found this Mike figure, that you know, I found him first and was able to introduce him to my brother. He's definitely a cool figure. I like him still to this day. He's not the craziest figure or anything, but you know, he's still got plenty of crazy detail like barnacles and fish all over his body and stuff for no real reason other than to make him not just look like a traditional sailor. He comes with a bag and like a busted up oar. He doesn't have that many weapons, but to make up for that, he comes with this crazy seagull who has a pistol, a sword, and an Uzi. He is strapped to the beak with weapons, so I guess he's got Mike covered. Mike doesn't need that many weapons when he's got that much artillery on his little buddy there. I don't know if I would say Midshipman Mike is my favorite of the military turtles, but I'd say he probably was as a kid and might be the most special for me personally. Beach Combin Mike is a simple figure. He's just a beach bum. But for some reason, I really liked this one as a kid. I remember getting this at some point later in the line. The Sewer Spitters came a bit later, and absolutely loving it. For some reason, I really liked the color scheme. I liked the way it smelled. I know that's a weird thing to say, but something about that guitar on his back, which was the water pouch. You would fill that with water and then squeeze it and he would spit out of his mouth. That had a very nice smell to it. There was a smell that a lot of like pool toys and squeak toys had back then. I remember particularly going to Ocean City, Maryland as a kid. As I've said in earlier videos, we went there on vacation many summers. And you'd walk into a gift shop and they would have these like little squeaky plastic or rubber sharks that you could play with in the pool, and you know, you'd fill them up with water and squeeze them and they'd squirt the water and everything. And they had this smell. I don't know how to describe this smell, but I loved it as a kid. I really liked that smell. And this Mike toy kind of smelled like that. I would say Beach Combin Mike might have been the last turtle variant I got as a kid that I absolutely loved. That's not to say there weren't more variants that I definitely liked. There were plenty that I did, but I think this was the last like favorite variant that I had. I just remember for some reason as a kid kind of feeling like it was special. Like I had a special bond with this toy. I was proud it was mine, and I just thought it was cool. I just thought he was a cool looking figure. It was like more me than any of the other figures. I don't know why. It just felt like that, and I really liked it. I thought the accessories were fun. He came with a little drink that unfortunately he can't really hold very well. He came with a boombox that's also a machine gun, and you know, it's just a cool, fun figure. And I guess other people like it too, because for the new Mutant Mayhem movie, they made a 4-pack of new figures that are the new Turtles dressed up like some of the old toys, and the Michelangelo is Beachcombin Mike, although they don't call him Beachcombin Mike. I believe they called it something else. You know, not knocking on the new toys too much. I think they leave a bit to be desired. I don't know if those designs really translate to toys very well, especially with Playmates' new limited detailed sculpts and limited paint jobs, especially limited paint jobs. You're never going to get one as good as the original Beachcombin Mike. So if you want Beachcombin Mike, get the original, especially since the original squirts water. And that is a ton of fun. I remember first getting this figure and going into the downstairs bathroom, which we usually call the downstairs bathroom, but they were kind of color-coded in my house. There was a blue bathroom that was upstairs, which is the one all of us kids used in the morning. There was the green bathroom, which had the shower, and that was in my parents' bedroom. We used the bathtub when we were younger in the blue bathroom. Then we got older, we went to you graduated to the green shower when you got a little older. And downstairs there was no bathtub or shower. It was the red room, but it wasn't really red. It had like a very dark maroon wall, and then everything else was kind of like beige and cream colored and stuff. But it was the darker, more like cool, mellow, relaxing bathroom. Like when you went in there, you took the most relaxing dumps of your life in that downstairs bathroom. But I remember running in there with Beachcombin Mike and popping open that guitar and filling them full of water and just trying them out and having a blast with that toy on the back patio and just squirting it. Tons of fun, really fun action feature. It's surprising it took them that long in the line to come up with a water squirting action feature. But they eventually did it, and definitely as a kid, this was my favorite of the sewer spitters. I don't know if it's still my favorite today, but he was definitely my favorite as a kid, and very well could still be my favorite today. Still always seems like a special figure for some reason to me. It's alive! It's alive! It's Michelangelo as Frankenstein, or Michelangelo as Frankenstein's monster, or Michelangelo as the monster, or Michelangelo as the creature, or whatever the hell you want to call him. It's the Frankenstein monster. This was part of the first wave of Universal monster figures, and I don't think we actually owned this one when I was a kid. We definitely saw it and held it at some point. I want to say we borrowed it, but I don't know if we had it. We definitely owned it for a brief time. The glow-in-the-dark effect on this one is not very impressive, as no part of him is cast in glow-in-the-dark plastic like Leo and Raph's figures were. He's mostly just dark, murky colors, then with the exception of his eyes, teeth, fingernails, and some other details like clips and all, there's little hits of glow-in-the-dark paint. And the paint is nowhere near as strong as the plastic. You barely see them, even if they are glowing. So unfortunately, the glow play feature is not really that existent with this figure. It's there, but it's not very interesting. But that being said, he's still a cool figure. I don't have any of his accessories, I just have the Frankenstein Mike, but I know he did come with quite a few interesting accessories, including a torch with fire, which I find funny because if you've ever watched the Frankenstein movies, he doesn't like fire. He's actually terrified of fire. It's like his worst nightmare. It's his kryptonite. It's his wolf's bane. Like, fire is his least favorite thing in the world. So it's really strange that he wields fire when he's the Frankenstein monster. I get the reference, like I remember Fritz waving the fire with the torch in his face, the angry villagers come after him with flaming torches, but it's just kind of funny to have the monster wielding a flaming torch. But I guess also, Leonardo as the Wolfman was wielding the pure silver cane with the wolf's face on it. So I guess they all just carry around their weaknesses. Though I guess the fire isn't really Frankenstein monster's weakness, it's just something he's afraid of. Maybe he got over his fear of fire when he found out you need fire to bake pizzas. I can kind of see making Michelangelo the Frankenstein monster. While you wouldn't think of him being physically like the Frankenstein monster, I think most people would assume Raph to be the most brutish of the Ninja Turtles. I think it fits because Frankenstein's monster was never a bad guy. He was misunderstood. He was actually loving and kind and just wanted to have fun, kind of like Michelangelo. So I think that's actually a pretty good pick for Mike. Also, I think the M on his belt, while obviously is supposed to stand for Michelangelo, can double as monster. So in my head, even though that wasn't intentional, Leo can have the L for Larry Talbot, and Mike can have the M for monster. I don't think they meant for that to be true, especially when you get to Raph. But it works out that the other three, other than Raph, can all kind of have the monster that they represented with the letter on their belt. The Universal Monster crossover was definitely one of the last great Turtle sublines, one of the really cool ones. I know I am partial to the Universal Monsters. I'm a huge fanboy of the Universal Monsters, so I'm definitely going to like that more. But even the second wave of Universal Monster figures, I don't think are as good as the first wave. And a lot of the later waves of Turtle figures are just not too interesting in my opinion. But the Universal Monster ones were definitely great, and even though it wasn't how the figure line went out, I think it would be a pretty solid way to go out. So that's all the Mike figures I'm going to talk about today. Again, if I don't have the figure, I can't really talk about it much. There's plenty I have things to say about. I already talked about how lame that farmer Michelangelo was that my brother got when we were kids that almost killed the line for me. It was one of the contributing factors for why I hated the line eventually, was this tired, boring-looking farmer Mike who came with a green tractor. There was plenty of other Michelangelo figures that I don't own now that I had as a kid that I can't talk about. But then there's also ones I do have that I didn't talk about, like this pizza launching monstrosity. I didn't know these things existed as a little kid, honestly. I found out about these when I was in my 20s, and honestly, I think they're kind of hideous. I guess that's kind of the point, but I don't really get it. It doesn't look like it's the Turtles. It looks like Cookie Monster or something cosplaying as the Turtles. That they look really big and chunky and demented, and their faces look crazy. I don't know what they were thinking with those, and I guess a lot of people agree with me because when they re-released them recently, they've just been warming pegs for a long time. No one is buying those. The storage shell turtles were constantly flying off shelves. The new characters fly off shelves the fastest, but when they re-released these pizza flingers, no one was buying them. But I don't really have anything to say about them either. And this was just me talking about the figures that I remember most of all, and I still happen to own today. So I hope I was able to take you down a pleasant little stroll down memory lane and remind you why Michelangelo is the original party dude. Do all the liking and subscribing and the sharing and the bell stuff.